to Whole Foods, and I thought I had a few minutes before they closed, and I see that they're boarding up the store.
Hello everyone, it's Shanae Cartwright, and today I wanted to come to you from a different perspective, so voice instead of video, and this is in response to the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. I am at a place now where I am certainly aware, and I've been numb for the past, I'd say, day or two. To see a man murdered in the street like that by not just an enemy or someone he may have known or an attacker or a terrorist, or maybe I shouldn't say terrorist. To see this man killed in the street by law enforcement was heart-wrenching. It was traumatic. And I think at first sight of it, I couldn't believe it. I really could not believe that this man, who I don't even want to say his name, this police officer who is sworn in to protect and serve, had the audacity to put his knee on the neck of a living, breathing human being. Let alone the fact that he was a black man who had supposedly been arrested for forgery. I don't care what the arrest charges were. I don't care the reason why he was under arrest. My issue is that he was under your knee. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't be modern day living in America. I think Will Smith said it best, and I know I'm paraphrasing. Racism has always existed. We just now have it on film. I feel as though we are living in modern day riots / Jim Crow / racial injustice. But the thing is, it seems as though we've been living in this all along, but it was not so evident. It wasn't in our faces. Like, we've heard of the justice system and things that need to change. We've heard about the judicial system and how we need to get out and vote. And we are constantly, as a people in a community, and me saying a black woman, we're constantly being told how much our voice matters and our vote counts. But we are in this place where we are actually have seen a murder take place on film, to be broadcasted across our nation and the world, and in a way capture what certain people, because I understand it is not everyone, what certain people think about African American, black lives. And I'm specifically saying African Americans, Africans of the diaspora, those of us who were brought to this place, to this country, not by choice, but brought to this country and have remained here for generations. I'm at a loss for words, because I think after everything has happened and I've seen so many protesters and the riots, things have really hit for me. Today, tears welled up in my eyes and I cried. And you would think that I knew George Floyd. You would think that I knew his family, or there was some type of connection or extension. But the only connection for me is that this man is a black African American who was treated in a way that I would not wish on my worst enemy. To me, but I was at a place of no motivation. I want to be so honest and transparent with you today. And that's the reason as well why this video is blacked out today. I have been at a loss for words. I've cried. I've thought about my brothers, two intelligent black African American men who are doing wonderful things. I thought about my husband, who is a pastor, a preacher, an influencer. And he shared a story with me maybe months ago about his encounter with law enforcement. And then later on, he shared it on this week, he shared it on his Facebook page, talking about how he was pulled over by police officers on a back country road. It was him and one of his friends. Biggest issue with everything that I've seen is that not just him being murdered like that, but we've seen more and more people who have shown their true colors in this time. My timeline, my connections on social media I've been flooded, inundated, overwhelmed with posts of people expressing how they are not concerned about the death, the murder. Let me correct myself. The murder of George Floyd. I've seen posts about people in so many ways blatantly honoring and acknowledging that this man was killed, and that if we have a problem with it, that we should go home, that we should go to our SHIT hole in Africa. I've seen posts of people who have had full scholarships to different colleges such as Arizona, who those scholarships have now been rescinded because these candidates who were potentially going to school in the fall posted something that was disgusting online. I am now in a place where I am looking left and right to see if I see someone who does not look like me, and how do they perceive me. Not necessarily to care of what their opinion is about me, but more so for safety. My brothers, two intelligent Black African American men who are doing wonderful things. I thought about my husband, who is a pastor, a preacher, an influencer. And he shared a story with me maybe months ago about his encounter with law enforcement. And then later on, he shared it on this week, he shared it on his Facebook page, talking about how he was pulled over by police officers on a back country road. It was him and one of his friends. What could potentially happen to him by being on this back country road with this white officer who accosted him and his friend. And I thought to myself, wow, I just, mind again blown. I thought about my brother, he's an African American male, beautiful brown man. He wears locks. But yet, I'm sure that many people look at him and see him as a threat. I thought about my brother, my older brother, my oldest brother, who has a 12-year difference from me. And y'all excuse me because I am getting a little emotional. And how I've heard stories of him being harassed by police officers. There's no way that they should ever experience dying a death like George Floyd died. And then the other thought that has come to mind recently in all of this is that I have become more aware. I told you that was the word that I'm thinking about, aware. I've become aware because as long as I can remember, as early as maybe the age of 15, I have been told, Shanae, you have to be on your A game. Shanae, you have to be 10 times on top of everything. You have to be smarter. You have to look good. You have to look put together. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And I realized that we have been fed myths as a people of all the things that we have to do, all the hurdles that we have to jump through to prove that we are not inferior, to prove that we are good enough. And I put a post on my Instagram page, and it simply said, and I put it in 3 different posts, you are enough. Because I wanted people to know you are enough. And I wanted to remind myself, I needed to remind myself that I am enough. And enough is enough. Because that's what this country was founded on. Survival of the quote unquote fittest. And African Americans, Africans at the time, Africans brought over from Africa, were told that they were less than, inferior. They were told that they were animals, in fact. They were considered animals. And so ever since that time, we have had to train ourselves, our brains, our mentality, to level up to a people who have never considered us good enough. Isn't that something? Where we are constantly at a place where we are trying to compare ourselves to a people who will never feel that we are worthy or good enough. Well, I have news today. It is not up to them or anyone else to validate our worth. I sit here today as a black woman and reminded that my color is not good enough. I'm reminded that my degrees are not good enough. I'm reminded that even if I elevate to a higher socioeconomic class, you're not good enough. They can smile in your face and they can tell you, oh, how articulate you are and how well you do X, Y, and Z, but you will never be good enough. But you know what? It is well with my soul. Because God reminds me each and every day that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that I look in the mirror and I am reminded that I am created in God's image, and it is not for anyone else to tell me my value, but it is for me to honor and accept the value that God has already given me. No other culture or race is God to tell me that I'm not good enough. And so this week I've decided enough. Why am I measuring my standards to a people who did not create me? Because that is what was ingrained in me. That is what was embedded in me to do. And no fault from my ancestors or my mother or my family. That was what they were taught to do. You see, it's cyclical in nature because it's learned behavior. And when you learn something and you think that it's right, you continue to instill those habits and those patterns in the next generation. Similar to what has happened, what we see with racism and systemic racism, when we see how a white child can hug a black child and think nothing of it. But when these adults grow up to become older, whatever has been embedded in them or ingrained in them from different families who have told them, don't like this person because they look like that. Don't like this person because their hair is kinky. Don't like this person because they came from this family and that background, or because they are undereducated. Then it's learned behavior. We have to do better with dismantling the myths. We have to do better with edifying one another. And this is not just for black people. This is not just a charge for black people. Like I said earlier, I know that it is not every white person or every whatever race you are who you are anti-black or feel as though we are inferior. But there are a lot of them. And so for those of us who know better, who know that it is not right to treat somebody because of what they look like, MLK, come on, content of their character, then we have to be a force with dismantling the behaviors and the gestures, the deconstruction that goes on between human being and human being, where someone has the audacity to tell somebody that they're not good enough, where someone has the power or the thought to act in rage and try to tell somebody construction that goes on between human being and human being, where someone has the audacity to tell somebody that they're not good enough, where someone has the power or the thought to act in rage and try to tell somebody that they're less than dirt, that they're beneath them, that you're a nigger, all because of what you were taught, or now because you are faced with the situation and you are frustrated and you are angry, and so your true self is coming out. It has to be rooted. It has to be nipped in the bud when you see the root. It has to be stopped right then. And I think the biggest issue with what we've seen in today's society is that a lot of us have experienced subtlety in racism, but no one has been willing to say, stop, that's wrong. People walk on eggshells for years around people that they know are racist, that they know are bigots, but they won't say a word. And they will, in their justification, they'll drive people out of positions. They'll have people leave different organizations because they make people feel so uncomfortable. But I look at the organization, I look at the system, and I look at the people who choose to keep their mouths closed. I've decided that I'm enough. And I hope you too, whoever is listening, I hope and pray that you decide and you declare today that you are enough. I hope and pray that you will also open up your mouth as Isaiah the prophet has declared. Cry loud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet and tell the people of their sins. Now, of course, he was talking about the people of Israel, but I'm here today to tell you that scripture is even applicable for us today, that we are charged and mandated to tell people of their sins, of injustice, of holding up injustice, of allowing people to be disenfranchised, from denying people the right to live, to breathe, to be as God has called them to be, a human being. The reason why people scream no justice, no peace is because we have been long overdue to experience and live in a place of peace because justice has been upheld. So I hope that you will do your part and don't just look at the world and all of its animosity and all of the atrocities that we see and shake your head. But I pray, along with shaking your head, that you would open up your mouth. There are too many people going silent in this world and looking the other way. You're turning the cheek when he didn't tell you to turn your cheek that way. Not in that way. Don't look the other way when you see injustices. Don't be fearful. Open up your mouth. The Bible declares that if they're not against you, then they're for you. And so I pray that whoever's listening to this, you will continue to be pricked and convicted in your spirit, that we all are at the age of accountability and we know the difference between right and wrong. And being at the age of accountability means we will be held accountable for when we see something and don't say something. Always remember that a mind change equals a life change.